Up next, we have composers, songwriters, and musicians Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who won an Academy Award for their incredible score for David Fincher's The Social Network. Last year, the duo won an Emmy Award for scoring HBO's Watchmen. Today, we are honoring them. They're in the original score category and recognizing their work in two films, Netflix's Mank and Pixar Animation's Soul, both of which received an Academy Award nomination in the original score category. So hello and welcome, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Jazz.
Likewise. Hi. Thank you so much for being here at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. The first thing I want to say, obviously, is congratulations, but let's talk first about Mank and recording that in the pandemic. How did that come together? What were the conversations you had with David? And then what were the challenges?
Now, talking about the challenges, it was one of those things where there is no option. It's not like we can say, okay, we're in a pandemic and we can do it in some other country, or we can do it. It was what it was. And we were lucky enough to have a very good team around us who helped put the musicians together, phenomenal musicians. That was probably the only bonus of the pandemic, was there wasn't a lot of music being recorded. So we had incredible musicians at our disposal. And it would really be, like what you'd imagine, every part recorded separately at home by the musician. Our engineer had supplied us with mics of the era that would be transported from one place to the next, sanitized, with instructions on how they should set them up to record. The sheet music, obviously, I think Conrad had a Zoom with everyone, and then we just basically prayed to God that it would work out. and it did. Surprise! I mean, when we finally got the sessions back and assembled, pressing the space bar it's not as good as being in the room and seeing everyone play, but it was a very good feeling. And we knew then that we could make it work. And in some ways, I think, because one wouldn't normally have every single part isolated like that, I think we did manage to pull off a couple of things within the score that would have been difficult if it had all been in a room. But as we're both incredible optimists, we tried to take that view of things.
I'm curious, though, how did working on Watchmen prior to that help you when it came to scoring Mank, especially with the big jazz band and that orchestra?
Well, in the timeline of things, we were deep in the world of Watchmen when we knew Mank was coming up, and when Soul was also lingering around. So we had quite a bit of time before we actually started working on these projects to deeply think about them and feel tremendous anxiety about them, particularly with Mank, because we thought it would require us, and it did, to move into a different lane that we're not that accustomed to. In this case, every note being played by other musicians in an orchestral setting in a different style, with the added challenge, as Atticus mentioned, of it happening during a pandemic, which we didn't know at the time we were working on Watchmen. So knowing that we were going to be delving into, or thinking we were, big band era 1940s music, an opportunity came up during Watchmen where we needed exactly the same thing. We needed a big band piece of the exact same era. So it was a good testing ground, and it was a scenario that popped up. Hey, can you get this done? Can you write a piece of music that sounds authentically like it's from this year? And can it be recorded and done and lyrically tie in with what's happening on the screen in an oblique yet haunting way? And can we have it in less than a week? So it was a good test run to to see if we could pull it off, and it worked out great. And I think that experience gave us the confidence that, and this is months before we began the actual composition on Mank, we went into it with the confidence that we can pull off the unique to us challenges, the new experiences we had. We can adapt into this new canvas. And it greatly influenced how we approached the songwriting and score writing for Mank.
And switching lanes, then you worked on Soul, or in between you worked on Soul, working on your first animated feature, tapping into the sounds of the great before. What was that experience like, working with Pixar and working on your first animated feature?
And we did start very early on Soul, maybe 2 years we were working on it. Now, the reason I bring up that is that when you've got a script, you can read it and you can start working in a way where you know where the tent poles are. In Soul, they were discovering them as we were working. So it meant that we probably scored Soul 6 times over the course of the process, but each one was an incredible journey. And also I think that we had to get over some of our own stuff, because like Mank, it was walking into a completely different world, again filled with anxiety. And there was a period when it was kind of like, we did do some kind of shitty music that was sort of like us trying to be a version of us doing Pixar instead of us just being authentically us, which is what I think the film ended up as. So
just to add a quick bit in that, we learned a lot in the last, we'll call it a year, the sequence of Watchmen, Soul, Mank. We traditionally, as Atticus said, work from a score where we can think about, if this is the beginning and that's the end, how can we make it kind of feel cohesive and establish it evolving but making sense and referring back to itself at times. With Watchmen, the first of these projects chronologically, was the first time I'd ever worked in television. And Damon Lindelof and the writers knew where the story was going, but we only had the first script, the first hour of 9 when we started composing. And we heard a jumbled kind of explanation that didn't make any sense of what was going to happen. But it skimmed over things like, and this entire episode is going to happen in the 1940s and lots of stuff like that. So it kind of trained us with real tight deadlines to make decisions and work on the fly and kind of be able to adapt to, here's a curveball coming you didn't expect, but still with the intent to have a score that sounds like it was deeply thought through, as if you knew everything that was going to happen, that makes sense cohesively as a whole. When we got to Soul, as Atticus was mentioning, it was so fluid that major things were changing. The entire different endings, new characters would come up. Again, it got into the timetable wasn't rushed. It was extended, but it was a lot of having to second guess decisions that you'd made based on information you had at the time, which is now irrelevant. When we got to Mank, that was back to our traditional, things modified a bit, but the script was 99% intact from the first read to the 95% intact to the final cut. So you were able to think about it in a kind of way that was much more familiar in terms of what are we trying to say and how can we make it all make sense and feel connected and cohesive.
And I do think the thing with both of those, what those films have in common, is the directors really understand the power of music and allowed us to help tell the story and use the music as a storytelling device. And I think, it is testament to those people as much as our work, why we might be sitting here today.
And may I just say, we're both really flattered to have the recognition. You know, it's strange for us, you know, and it does feel good to see that work that you just try to do your best has touched some people and resonated. So we appreciate the recognition here. Sincerely, thank you.
Very much so. Thanks.